What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So last week in the UK, we did have a fairly large PlayStation 5 system restock, and naturally we hear that and we say, oh, the bots will be busy, or all these scalpers and resellers will swoop in and grab all these systems. Well, turns out that might not have been the case this past week, as we had software numbers that seemed to back up the idea that gamers got a hold of these systems, and we'll talk about that here today because it could mean that scalpers or resellers might either be losing interest in this system, or maybe they're unable to get as many as they were before. Also, we're going to talk about an interesting comment by a developer on the idea of a Switch Pro or a Switch revision and what it would mean for them. And we do have a memo that popped up online that goes in a bit more detail as to why a certain feature was not implemented on the Nintendo 64. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Koei Tecmo and Age of Calamity. We did hear from them, like within the first week that Age of Calamity came out, that they had sold or shipped, I should say, 3 million copies. That's quite a bit for a Warriors game. It like immediately became the best-selling Warriors game, and that's what happens when you attach the Zelda IP or Breath of the Wild and you make it canon and tell a story that people have been very interested in since playing Breath of the Wild. Worked out really well, and we have an update here for their sales number. We can see from Gamatsu, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity shipments top 3.5 million. So throughout the holiday, they sold another 500,000 copies. And look, the game has kind of fallen off a bit in terms of just being in the press and media and all of this. It was really, like, people were talking about it a lot when it first released, and then it's kind of quietly faded away a bit. But remember, we are going into the big anniversary for Zelda this year, so I think this game will continue to sell well enough throughout the year. And if Koei Tecmo is already really happy with it, and maybe they have like a sale later on in the year during the anniversary and all of this for Zelda, the big celebration, I could see this easily continuing on, millions of copies still to go. So I'm sure Koei Tecmo's happy. They're ecstatic, I bet. And then Nintendo, I'm happy as well. So yes, they'll probably continue working together quite a bit. Also, one genre of game that was kind of missing for the Nintendo Switch early on were those racing games. We did have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe there, but otherwise from third parties, it wasn't as much. However, now things have been changing a bit, with EA even having Burnout on the system. But it looks like a franchise is returning to Nintendo after being missing throughout like the entirety of the Wii U's generation. We can go over here. This is a quote saying, "One thing that we're actively working on is bringing NASCAR to the Nintendo Switch platform." And this is from Dmitry Kozko. And yes, it's been that long. Apparently, NASCAR hasn't been on a Nintendo system since like 2012 on the Wii. I mean, look, the Wii was very, very popular, large install size, so it's obvious that they would want to put it there. But the Wii U, let's be real, a lot of third parties backed away from that system pretty quickly based on how it was going with its own system sales. But it's pretty obvious that the Switch is continuing to bring back more and more publishers and developers, just because they're going to report in like a week that the system sold at or around 80 million units, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. So there we go. NASCAR 2021 most likely will be on the Switch this year. I've not really been into the NASCAR series, but for anyone who was hoping that it would eventually show up, shouldn't have to wait too much longer. Oh, and we all know, obviously, Halo Infinite was not there during the Xbox Series X launch because we'd all be playing it now, but we know it will be coming out, I still think, holiday 2021. They said fall, but seriously, it could be November. It could be like right at the end of November and basically be a holiday release. And people have still been wondering what's going on with the series. We just got an update last month. It looks like going forward, we will be seeing monthly updates. This, according to a Reddit post from their community manager. We're committed to at least monthly high-level updates, and the next Inside Infinite is coming out this week. This month, we're talking with members of the Sandbox team to share some insights into their vision for Halo Infinite and the work they're doing. And it goes on a bit more to say that they're not going to be showing off any massive screenshots, like super high resolution, no release dates, nothing like that added. Just more insight and updates around what they are doing to improve the game and different ideas and features, I guess, that they're adding in, and just what they think about the progress so far. I guess, look, they're going to try to continue keeping us in the loop here and reminding us that the game is still coming out later on this year. It's not a bad idea. We'll probably also have flights take place over the summer to get the multiplayer side ready. And look, anything they can do pre-marketing their big push is probably going to help them out in the long run. So hey, later this week, I guess we'll find out something else about Halo Infinite and how the development's going. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5 restock and some of the software sales out of the UK. It does paint an an interesting picture as to how the restock of the PlayStation 5 systems went in the UK. But let's go over to the top 10 here, where we have Hitman 3 at the top. That's number one. Actually sold 17% more than Hitman 2 did when that released. These are physical copies, by the way. And then we also have Animal Crossing New Horizons at 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 3, Spider-Man Miles Morales at 4, and that is up from 12. So a pretty big jump there for Spider-Man. Then we have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Grand Theft Auto 5, Ring Fit Adventure, Just Dance 2021, Minecraft on the Switch, and FIFA 21. And if we go to gamesindustries.biz, they say some new PS5 consoles released in the market last week, which had a positive impact on a few titles. Spider-Man Miles Morales up 161%, as we talked about, jumping from 12 to 4. Demon's Souls is back in the charts at number 27 with a 291% sales increase, and even Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War saw a bit of a jump, up 56%. Assassin's Creed Valhalla only went up 7%, but the PS5 version alone went up 174%, showing PS5 game sales increasing 324% versus last week. Now, the reason those software sales there is a good sign is because when someone who's gonna play the system and gets a hold of it, they're gonna buy a game, right? They're not just gonna buy the system and go home with it and look at the thing. They're gonna get some games with it, maybe some controllers, and that usually will drive software sales up alongside of the console. But we don't necessarily see that every time because people are buying these systems and attempting to flip them on eBay, Amazon, Craigslist, anywhere you can sell it online. That's what they're doing right now, or even locally on Craigslist. You might go on there and see someone with stacks of PS5s and trying to sell them for $1,100 each. But something I have been keeping an eye on with eBay is that the sales are kind of trending down or even flat right now. You see them online for $800 or less with free shipping even, and on eBay where you got to pay to ship the thing, and it's a big system. It's not little. And you also have to pay the eBay fees, maybe PayPal fees. It doesn't work out to that $800 like it appears to on that listing. You're gonna drop down a bit there. So the profit margin is becoming slimmer and slimmer. And the fact that so many people were able to, I guess, get the PS5, we did hear from Game that they were hit by a bot, 2,000 PS5s or something, but they went back through and just made sure that only one per customer went out. So if they were able to do that correctly and we see these results from software, I'm kind of thinking it's a combination of things here. Maybe resellers are looking at this and losing some interest because of the slimmer profit margins, and then maybe on the retail side, they're starting to get things figured out a bit more when it comes to these bots. So, I mean, if it's one per customer, yes, as Sony continues to hopefully flood the market well with PS5 systems, you will see the pricing continue to drop down. My estimation was about April, probably when we'll see really just MSRP almost across the board. I'm not sure when you're gonna be able to walk into a store and actually buy one, but like online, I could see it being around there. Really, if you look at the PS5, we're all kind of hanging out looking forward to Returnal right now. That's sort of it with a dated game. So not even like a ton of hype right now when it comes to games coming out anytime soon. Good games out now to play because it is backwards compatible. So we're going to look forward to Persona 5 Strikers, just as an example, later on this month. But like if Ratchet and Clank was coming out in February, and then we had Returnal in March, and then Gran Turismo in like May or something, and then you have Horizon. Like if you had release date after release date after release date, then you could see, okay, maybe those prices will continue on because the hype level will be super high. People are still looking for the system, but it's not necessarily because of these massive releases that are coming up real quick. I mean, even Hitman 3, 49% of the sales for that game was on the PS5. So yeah, some people probably picked up the PS5 and Hitman 3 right alongside of it. So here's hoping that means that we are going to be rolling up to more MSRP level pricing in the next month or two as we head into April. And then we'll, I'm sure, get plenty of release dates that might end up spiking the price again. But hey, we'll see. So far, at least from this restock, it looked pretty good. Next up, let's talk about an interesting comment from a developer about the potential Switch Pro or the Switch revision. We can go over here with an interview for Nintendo Everything, this being with Engine Software. They did the port for No More Heroes 1 and 2, bumped that up to 60 frames per second, also working with Falcom Games, and did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. They say rumors of a Switch Pro never seem to end, and it's only natural that Nintendo will eventually come out with some sort of new system. Given that Engine Software has been involved with a bunch of Switch games over the years and has a lot of technical experience, is there anything you'd like to see from a Switch 2 or Switch successor in terms of specs? They say, truth be told, our opinion on this might be counterintuitive for a lot of people, but we are not large subscribers of the Pro model. Sure, it would be nice to have more RAM or faster GPU or CPU compared to before, but if it is still considered the same platform, you must make sure your game runs on every model. So, for compatibility reasons, your performance gets benchmarked on the lowest specifications. We have seen with proper upgraded systems that the additional power never really got utilized well for this reason. So on one hand, they are correct. If you look at the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 Pro, no developer specifically created a game for those systems. They were always just upgrades if you wanted 4K. That was the biggest thing, or you want your game to run better. It's not a bad thing, though, to have that option as long as the games just work across the board there, because Nintendo themselves have said they want a family of devices, not just like one system like the Switch. Now, they have the Switch Lite, but maybe that Switch Pro or that Switch Revision is something else to add, or maybe it really is a replacement, you could say, for the current Switch, and eventually that one is slowly discontinued and gets replaced with the new Nintendo Switch or something like what they did with the 3DS. But yes, you would still have to make sure it works on the original Nintendo Switch. I mean, now we have some people are okay with things like 540p or 480p or something like Xenoblade. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at times got pretty muddy, but people still enjoyed the game. So if you could have that experience and have the option of 4K, which is still being talked about as a rumor for a Switch revision, I mean, why not? It's just an option. Now, the thing will really get interesting if Nintendo actually allows third-party developers to create specifically for that system, like they did kind of with the new 3DS XL. Yeah, then things could get a bit weird, and I don't think that's a good idea for developers to do that, because who's going to develop for the Switch and just ignore 80 to 90 million potential customers with the original Switch or that Switch Lite? Again, an option for someone who wants the docked 4K experience, maybe. I don't see any issue bringing that in as long as it's easier for developers to work with and they don't have to spend, extra time, significant amounts of extra time on this newer Switch to make sure everything works. Next up, let's talk about Konami, as there was a story going around for a little while now, especially yesterday, it really picked up steam, that they were dissolving their different game divisions. And a lot of that has to do with Konami just not being good at making games necessarily anymore. I mean, I guess they came out with Momotaro, and that's like taken Japan by storm. However, you see things like Pro Evolution Soccer go on a bit of a hiatus as they change engines and work with that. And we saw what happened with Metal Gear, where they brought out Metal Gear Survive, and that was a shame. And then they did Contra, and that didn't work out. So naturally, people see that they are restructuring, which is what they were doing, and they believe that they were just getting out of the games business entirely. However, we can see here, Push Dustin does point out Konami is still in the games business. They are just restructuring the company. It seems the 3 production divisions are being dissolved and shuffled into one. And then Gamatsu also says there were some reports today citing an over a week old restructuring announcement from Konami that mentioned dissolving its production divisions, which some misinterpreted as it shuttering console game production, which is false. Konami provided Gamatsu the following statement. The announcement made refers to an internal restructure, which with production divisions being consolidated. We have not shut down our video gaming division. And really, it's just something that companies have done already. Like Capcom did this at one point. I know Square has done this, and it's just making things more efficient or streamlined internally. Now, do I think Konami's gearing up for some big release? No, I still think that they are going to license out IPs to other developers and companies and allow them to create with that. And they'll do things like Momotaro, where they do some cell phone games, Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, their big push recently has been their pachinko machines. We got that awesome Silent Hill pachinko machine coming out. It's gonna be big stuff there in Vegas, I'm sure. But it's not something that I think Konami is as invested as, obviously, as they once were when we had things like the big Metal Gear Solid games coming out. Oh, and speaking of Metal Gear Solid and Konami, a little while ago, Nate and I had a whole conversation on the Spawn Wave Plus channel about how Silent Hill is probably being done by Sony and maybe Metal Gear Solid could be remade by Bluepoint. Well, check this tweet out here from David Hayter. Look who I've been hanging out with, an epic reunion with the Metal Gear Solid cast to rock your world. Details coming soon. There's a Zoom call of all of them there. And yeah, this of course brings back more and more speculation around that, but I think looking at this is just them kind of having some fun and maybe putting out a video or something on Twitter for fans with all of the different voices. I don't think this is going to then lead up to the Metal Gear Solid remake JPEG reveal or anything, but it's still fun to speculate and think about. As for Konami, basic restructuring internally, nothing too crazy I'd say going on here. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Stop and Swap. This was a feature that was proposed during the Nintendo 64's life, where you would apparently have your two different cartridges, maybe Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, and you'd have Kazooie playing, you'd take that one out, and you'd put Tooie in, and then you'd start playing, and it would unlock some new feature in Tooie, which apparently is gonna be like this ice key. Think about how with the PlayStation 1, it would say insert disc 2 when you're playing Final Fantasy. Similar, kind of, but you're changing out cartridges instead. But unfortunately, that feature was never implemented, and there was a lot of speculation as to why that would be. A lot of it came down to the technical specifications around what the 64 could do without that cartridge inserted, which wasn't much, turns out. However, it looks like a memo from Nintendo to Rare, kind of detailing the issues and what they didn't like about it, surfaced online. Let's take a look at it. Now, this was to Chris Stamper from Nintendo. This is when Chris Stamper was at Rare, as they did have the idea for Stop and Swap, which was also going to be used for Donkey Kong 64. They say there is no way that we can guarantee that the RD-RAM will retain data long enough in all current and future version of the Nintendo 64 console for this feature to work. There's also a risk of damage to both the console and the game pack should the swap be made while power is still on. However unlikely, there is a chance that a consumer who has exchanged game packs with the power on will experience a latch-up condition in a chip, which could cause overheating and potential consumer safety problem. Basically, Nintendo couldn't guarantee that the stop and swap method would work every single time, even if done as correct as possible. I mean, think about with the 64, how many times you still have to kind of play around with the cartridge to get it to read. And now think about, okay, I have like 10 seconds in like best case scenario to take this cartridge out while it's on, put this one in, and with later revisions of the 64, as they do kind of allude to here, that not all the versions of 64 would work with this method, it was shrunken down to like a second or something. So yeah, it already wasn't gonna be easy. You're gonna be popping it out and dropping a new cartridge in like immediately. And then think about when you bump the system, and too many variables, I would say, that could go wrong. I mean, it was a really cool idea, and Nintendo even admits that it is very creative, and they even suggested a password system, which wouldn't have been a bad idea. I've also seen some people point out that, what about like memory cards? You know, with those memory cards on the 64 that you drop into the controller and it would save some games. Other games would just be on the cartridge. That wouldn't be a bad idea either, and they could have also just sold more memory cards doing that. But again, it would also then lock an entire feature, I guess, behind the card. However, it doesn't look like any of this ended up happening, and some cool ideas where you'd use different games to unlock other things in games never actually happened. Next up, we are going to introduce a new segment into Newswave, that being where I put out a poll on the community tab each day when we have Newswave based around a topic that I think would be interesting to see how the split would be with the viewers here. You guys can go on there, you can vote, and then the next day we'll see how everything went and what the split is, and we can go over to this post here where I said, should Capcom significantly change Resident Evil 4 in the rumored remake or leave it more faithful to the original? I said either change it all or leave it as original as possible, and you know what? That split is not, I thought it would be much more in favor of leave it as original as possible, but based on about the 15,000 votes, 45% said to change it all, change as much as you can for Resident Evil 4 remake, which was going to be a divisive topic, I know, because there are a lot of people who are huge fans of Resident Evil 4, and to see some of that stuff altered and changed around might have frustrated them. But it's always interesting to see how people feel about these different topics, so we will continue to do this going forward. Make sure you check out the community tab each and every day. I'll probably post it later on in the afternoon, and then that following day, we'll take a look and see how it all went. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Soundhammer saying, a 5th stars appears on the Platinum page. Okay, we'll never guess who the studio is for the new KOTOR. Nice. Wait a second. You know what? If I would like to see Platinum Games do a Star Wars game, why not? Although that might be a nightmare for Disney, because from what I've heard, and the big thing with Disney with these Star Wars games is that the approval process is such a pain. Like, it takes forever, and that's one of the reasons I feel like they created this Lucasfilms game division, is so that they could kind of work between studios a lot easier when it comes to approving the color of Darth Vader's lightsaber, or like new colors of boots or something for Luke Skywalker. Like little things like that have to go through apparently an entire approval process. So Platinum Games always has some wild and wacky ideas for different characters and events in their games. Yeah, that would be interesting, but it would be pretty cool to see. I know we had like the Force Unleashed and that got way over the top, but get Platinum Games in there and see what they do with Star Wars. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike, leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There was the PlayStation 5 restock in the UK. I know other places were getting restocks as well, so let me know down below if you were able to get one. I'm hoping more and more people who are gonna, actually play the system are able to get it. And as we see, software sales will spike as that happens, so we'll keep an eye on things there. Also, what do you think about the Switch Pro comments by the developer? Not as on board as I think a lot of people were expecting there, but I guess their reasoning makes sense because they would still basically be developing for the current Switch. They would just get, I guess, better performance out of the Pro. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.